first introduced to climbing 4 years ago. I had several friends that were into it, and they invited me to go and assured me that they had all the equipment and that it would be a good time. I showed up not knowing what to expect, not knowing anything about climbing, and left with sore fingers, tight forearms, a newfound obsession, and a desire to learn. So the International Olympic Society announced in August of this year that climbing has been added as a sport in the Olympics, and it will make its first appearance in the Tokyo 2020 Games. So the Olympics is going to test 3 disciplines. It's going to test sport climbing, bouldering, and speed climbing, with sport climbing being my personal favorite because I get to set up the route myself and move up the wall. So what I just explained is called lead climbing. I love to lead climb because it pushes me to my limits and helps me grow. I led my first route about 4 years ago, and since then I have spent time for the last 4 years in gyms and outside, pushing myself to my limits and learning as much as I can. So I've also spent a lot of time with people with really good climbers that have taught me a lot. So this is why I'm going to teach you everything that I know about lead climbing a route. And whether you are have a passion for the outdoors, or are afraid of heights, or are interested in climbing, I'm going to teach you what lead climbing is, how to be safe while climbing, and all the steps involved in moving up the wall. So let's go ahead and get started. By introducing what lead climbing is. So lead climbing is the first person to set up the route. That's at least what Marshall Bryan said in his article titled How Lead Climbing Works. So the first person to move up the wall. I kind of drew a picture here for you guys to see. So when you think of a normal route, this is what you think, right? You have the person down here belaying, the person helping the person move up the wall, the person's climbing, and they are hooked into chains up here. But in order to get to this point when you're outside, there are bolts that you have to use to move up. So the first person, the lead climber, climbs up and clips into those bolts as they move up the wall safely to make it to these chains. So that is what lead climbing is, and that's why it's my favorite, because it pushes me to my limits. So the main factors of lead climbing are, the main factor is safety. And the different aspects of safety is education, like experience and knowledge, communication, and equipment. So we're first gonna get started with equipment. I'm gonna show you all the equipment. So of course you need your harness. I have my harness here. You're also going to need a helmet, safety first, as well as quick draws. I'm going to explain what these are in a little bit. Carabiners. See how that's there? It has locking capabilities, safety, as well as a rope. So we have this rope here. It's important to make sure that your rope is in working condition, just because there is wear and tear that happens with the rope. So one testing technique that you can do is you kind of fold it in half and you go all the way through your rope, all the way through, and see how it kind of has that loop there. It's not completely folded in on itself. If it had completely folded over on itself, I'd be worried about the fibers of that rope and the strength of it. But this one is good to go. Safety. And next is, so with the equipment, you want to make sure it's safe. And next is communication. So communication is between you and your partner, and the person between you, the lead climber, moving up the wall, and the belayer. It goes 2 ways. It needs to happen from the belayer and the person climbing. I will get into the specific commands later, but it starts all the way from before you get on the ground and as you're rappelling, before you get off the ground and as you're rappelling off the wall. So, and the last aspect of safety is knowledge and experience. So you want to make sure that you are with someone that's knowledgeable, as well as that you are experienced and know the route before you climb up a wall. There's, especially if you're climbing an unfamiliar route, make sure that you are, especially if you're new to climbing, make sure you are familiar with the route as Rebecca Gonzalez mentioned in her article, 6 tips for your first lead climb. So one of her tips was make sure you are familiar with the route if you are new. So now we're going to take everything we just talked about, the equipment, the communication, and knowledge, and we're going to take all of that and move up the wall. So as first off, you're going to hook into your harness. So you're in your harness, and then you're going to clip into the rope. So I have my rope here. I already have my figure 8 tied. Okay, so you're going to tie in to the rope, and I don't care how many times that you've climbed. I have been climbing for 4 years, and I always have my belayer double check my rope to see if I tied it correctly. You can get complacent, and we don't want that to happen. I always check my belayer's system with his carabiner and his ATC, air traffic control. This is what they use to belay you up the wall. I always check to make sure things are locked and ready to go on their harness. So you always want to double check your rope. And as the commands go, you're going to turn to your belayer and ask on belay. And they will say belay on once they've taken, once they are ready to go. And then you'll say climbing to let them know that you are ready to go. And they'll say climb on. And at that point, you're safely able to move up the wall. Just remember, you are not hooked into the wall. This is just kind of in between your legs as you're going up before you clip into that first bolt. So, as you are climbing up, you just kind of ascend the wall. These quick draws are what you use to clip in. So, when you get to a bolt, you will take this, you'll clip in, and you're going to take this up to a bolt. Clip that into a bolt. And now at that point, you are here. And as you're clipping in, notice how I had to pull up. I needed slack at that point. You're going to say pull to your belayer. That notifies to them that you are going to need slack. They give you slack. And then the moment you are clipped in to that wall, you say take. That lets them know. See all this slack? That lets them know. Boom, they want to take out the slack and have it be tight so that you can rest on that if you need to. Or if you slip and fall, boom, you're not going anywhere because you are hooked in. So those are important commands, pull and take. There's an article from REI. They talk about how you will rely on bolts as you climb up the wall, and that you generally, so there's Max Ritter. He had an article where he said, generally you kind of want to be within your hips and your chest when it comes to clipping in. So you're moving up the wall, you want to be about right here, and you want to make sure that you're in good balance. And something that he said was, sometimes you might decide to go past it, and that is okay. You just want to make sure the most important thing is to have good balance when you do that. So, as you're hooking in, you hook in, you use these all the way up the wall, and then you get to the top, and you're going to use 2 quick draws. I only have 1 right here, but you'll use 2, and you hook in to both, and then that is how, there's chains at the top, you hook both of these in, and then you let them know you're ready to come down. Make sure that they have you and you're rappelling. So at that point, you are rappelling down, and as you rappel, they'll stop you at each of the quick draws, and you'll take the quick draws off the wall. And now you have your top rope. You clipped into each bolt, you were rappelling down, you took those out, and now you have an efficient top rope going on right there. So I hope you guys learned something about lead climbing today, and I hope I've introduced to you the sport of climbing and the adventure in climbing, and that if you didn't already know the adventure in climbing, and that maybe when you watch the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo, you'll kind of know a little bit more of the skill and technique that goes into climbing up a wall.